All right, let's talk phobias. If you're doing your AQA A levels in psychology, you know this is a huge part of the psychopathology topic. But what's the actual difference between just being scared of something and having a full-blown clinical phobia? Well, today we are breaking down the official model, the behavioral, emotional, and cognitive characteristics, so you can absolutely nail that exam. So here's our game plan, and you'll notice it's structured just like a top-tier essay. We'll kick off with the foundational knowledge. That's the tripartite model. Then we'll get into applying it with some solid examples. And finally, we'll tackle that critical evaluation that really separates the good answers from the great ones. Let's jump in. First things first, we need to get our foundations sorted. What even is a phobia really? And what's this core model that the AQA spec wants you to know like the back of your hand? Okay, so what makes a phobia a genuine clinical diagnosis? It's not just, not liking spiders. The keywords you absolutely have to use in your exam are excessive, persistent, and irrational. And that last part is key. It has to significantly disrupt daily functioning. Think about someone with a phobia of birds. They might literally refuse to leave their house, miss out on work, avoid parks. The fear is so huge, it completely takes over their life. And this is where that core framework that AQA loves comes in, the tripartite model. It's actually pretty simple, but it's powerful. It basically says that every single phobia is made up of three connected parts: how you act, what you feel, and what you think. Let's pull each one of those apart. Right, let's really get into the nitty-gritty. This next section is pure AO1. This is your core knowledge, the description marks. We're going to nail down exactly what these behavioral, emotional, and cognitive characteristics actually look like. First up, the behavioral component. This is the stuff you can literally see. Panic is that classic fight or flight reaction. Screaming, running for the door, or even just freezing on the spot. Avoidance is a massive one. This is when someone changes their whole life just to not see their phobic object, which, funnily enough, just makes the phobia stronger. And then you've got endurance. This happens when you can't escape, so you just have to sit there with that crippling anxiety, like someone with a fear of flying on a 10-hour flight. Next, the emotional characteristics. It's super important to understand the difference between anxiety and fear here. Anxiety is that kind of long-term, low-level dread that's always in the background. Fear, on the other hand, is that immediate, sharp gut punch of terror when they actually see the thing they're scared of. But the crucial point is that the emotional response is completely out of proportion to any real danger. The person might even know it's ridiculous, but they just can't stop feeling that way. And finally, we have the cognitive component. This is all about the faulty thinking processes happening inside their head. Selective attention means their brain is like a heat-seeking missile for that specific threat. They can't look away. And this is fueled by irrational beliefs and cognitive distortions. So someone with a dog phobia doesn't just think, that dog might bite. They catastrophize. They think, that dog is a monster, it will attack me, and it's going to be the worst thing that has ever happened. Okay, so we've got the what. Now for the how. How do we actually apply all this knowledge to start banking those crucial AO2 marks? This is all about taking that model off the page and linking it to real-world examples and, of course, other psychological theories. Check this out. This table is a perfect way to see the model in action with two really different phobias. For arachnophobia, the behavior is super obvious: run away. For social phobia, it's more subtle, like avoiding a work meeting. For the spider, the emotion is that spike of terror. For the social situation, it's that long, gnawing anxiety beforehand. The thoughts are different too, but look, the structure, behavior, emotion, cognition is exactly the same. That's what shows the models so useful. Now, if you want a guaranteed way to grab those AO2 marks, start making links across topics. The behaviorist approach gives us a really powerful explanation for how a phobia might get started in the first place. And that explanation is, of course, classical conditioning. And the classic, if pretty horrifying example of this is Watson and Rayner's little Albert study. They took a neutral thing, a fluffy white rat, and repeatedly paired it with a horrible loud noise that scared the baby. Pretty soon, just the sight of the rat alone made Albert cry. He'd been conditioned to fear it. Now, while this gives us powerful evidence, it's an absolute goldmine for AO3 evaluation because, wow, the ethical issues here are massive. They created a phobia in a child and never even deconditioned him. All right, time to level up. This is where you can push your grade into the top bands. AO3 evaluation. We've learned the model, but now we need to be critical. We need to step back and ask, how good is it really? What are its strengths and where does it completely fall short? So, if you're writing that evaluation paragraph, here's what you need. A massive strength is its real world application. Because the behavioral bits are observable, it helps doctors diagnose phobias more reliably. And it directly leads to treatments like CBT, which tackles those faulty thoughts and actions. But, and this is a big but, it's also pretty reductionist. It breaks the phobia down into these three tidy boxes, but it doesn't tell us why it started. Was it a traumatic event? Genetics? The model is great at describing the what, but it's silent on the why. So, what's the bottom line here? The tripartite model is an essential starting point. It gives us a clear, structured way to understand what a phobia looks like. But it's not the whole story. It's necessary for sure, but it's just not sufficient on its own. And that leaves us with a really important question that acts as a bridge to our next topic. We now have a detailed blueprint of what a phobia is. But, describing a problem doesn't fix it. The real question is, what do we actually do about it? And that question leads us straight into the psychological explanations and, more importantly, the treatments designed to tear these fears down. Make sure you check that out next.